Somewhere in a rainforest right now, an ant is about to die in the strangest way imaginable. It does not know it yet. It is walking along a branch, doing its job, carrying food back to the nest, exactly like it did yesterday. But something has already gotten inside it. Over the next few days, that ant will start to behave in ways that make no sense. It will wander away from its colony, alone. It will climb to a very specific spot. It will lock its jaws onto a leaf and refuse to let go, ever again. And then it will die there, clamped in place, while something pushes its way out of the back of its head and grows toward the sky. The thing controlling that ant is not a parasite you can see crawling on it. It is a fungus. We call it Cordyceps. And what it does to its victims is so precise, so patient, and so genuinely disturbing that when scientists finally looked closely at how it works, the truth turned out to be even worse than the legend everyone repeats. This is not science fiction. This is happening in the wild, right now, millions of times over, and it has been happening for millions of years. Let me show you what Cordyceps really is. Let me back up and explain what this thing actually is. Cordyceps is a fungus, in the same broad world as mushrooms and molds. Except this one does not grow on dead wood or old bread. It grows on living animals. The specific star of this story has a long scientific name, Cordyceps unilateralis. The nickname is easier to remember. The zombie ant fungus. It targets carpenter ants in tropical forests, and its whole existence depends on doing one thing: hijacking an ant's body and turning it into a launch pad for more fungus. It begins with a single spore. The spore is microscopic, drifting through the humid forest air, and when it lands on the body of a carpenter ant, it sticks. Then it does something the ant could never expect. It drills in. The spore breaks through the ant's hard outer shell and slips inside, into the warm, wet space where the ant's muscles and organs live. From that moment on, the ant is no longer entirely its own. How does a speck of fungus break into an armored insect? It does it with chemistry. The spore releases enzymes that soften and dissolve a tiny patch of the ant's shell, just enough to push its way through. Once it is inside, it spreads not as a solid lump, but as separate fungal cells drifting through the ant's blood, multiplying as they travel. The invasion is silent. There is no wound the ant can feel, no attacker it can bite or brush away. By the time anything is wrong, the enemy is already inside the walls. Here is the first unsettling part. The ant does not drop dead, not for a while. The fungus is in no hurry at all. Once inside, it starts to grow, slowly and quietly, spreading through the ant's body as a web of thin fungal threads. And for days, the ant keeps living. It walks. It works. It goes out foraging with the colony. From the outside, nothing looks wrong with it. But on the inside, the fungus is feeding on the ant's soft tissues, careful to keep the most important parts alive, like a thief who leaves the lights on, so the neighbors never notice the house is being emptied. The fungus eats its host from the inside, while keeping that host walking around like normal. It is patient, it is precise, and it is waiting for exactly the right moment to take the controls. What makes this stage so eerie is how invisible it is. The ant seems fine, as far as we can tell. It is not sick in any way it could notice. It grooms itself, follows scent trails, answers its nestmates, and carries its share of the load. A colony of thousands has no simple way to know that one of its workers is already lost, already being slowly hollowed out and rebuilt into something that serves a different master. The takeover never announces itself. It just grows, day after day, until the moment it is ready to act. Then comes the day everything changes. Here is where it gets strange. The infected ant begins to act wrong. It starts to twitch and convulse. It wanders away from the safety of its nest, alone, something a healthy ant almost never does, and then it starts to climb. It climbs up the stem of a plant, away from the forest floor, heading for a very particular height. Scientists who study these forests have actually measured it. On average, the ant climbs to about 25 centimeters off the ground, often on the cooler, shaded side of the plant. This is not random wandering. That narrow band of height holds the perfect temperature and humidity for what the fungus is about to do. When the ant reaches the right spot, usually around the middle of the day, It performs the last act it will ever carry out under its own power. It bites down. It clamps its jaws onto a leaf vein or a twig, locks them shut, and never opens them again. Researchers call this the death grip. And here is where the story gets worse, and where almost everyone gets it wrong. For years, people assumed the obvious thing. The fungus must be controlling the ant's brain. It is a mind control fungus, a brain hijacker. It makes sense on the surface. The ant is doing exactly what the fungus needs, so the fungus must be inside the ant's head, steering its thoughts. But in 2017, a team of scientists, led by a researcher named David Hughes, decided to stop assuming and actually look. They used powerful three-dimensional microscopes to map precisely where the fungus was, inside a manipulated ant, cell by cell, all through its body. And what they found flipped the entire story on its head. The fungus was not in the brain. The fungal cells had spread all through the ant's body and wrapped themselves around its muscle fibers, threading between them like a net. They were everywhere the muscles were, but the brain itself was left untouched. The fungus surrounded the brain. It never invaded it. Think about what that actually means. The fungus is not reading the ant's mind or rewriting its thoughts. It is gripping the muscles directly and pulling on them, the way a puppeteer works the strings of a marionette. The brain may still be in there, possibly aware, along for the ride, while the body it lives in does things it never chose to do. When I first read that, it genuinely gave me chills. A brain hijack would be frightening enough. This is somehow worse. The ant is a prisoner trapped inside its own working body, watching its legs carry it to its own funeral. There was another detail in that study that stuck with me. The fungal cells inside the ant were not just scattered at random. They had linked up with each other, forming an interconnected network, threaded all through the body, almost like a single coordinated system, working the muscles in unison. The fungus was not one lone invader. It was an organized web, and the ant's body had become the machine it had learned to operate. That death grip, by the way, is permanent for a cold and deliberate reason. The fungus forces the muscles that close the ant's jaws into a state of extreme, locked contraction, and then breaks those muscles down so they can never release again. The jaws stay clamped shut even after the ant is dead. The fungus has welded its host into place. And the spot it chose, that 25 centimeters of height on the shaded side of a plant, was never about the ant's comfort at all. It is the perfect launch position for the fungus. The temperature is right, the humidity is right, and the dead ant is now hanging in the open air, directly above the trails where its old colony marches back and forth every single day. The fungus took the high ground on purpose, and it is rarely just one unlucky ant. In the worst-hit patches of forest, the corpses pile up. Researchers have counted more than 25 infected, clamped ant bodies in a single square meter of ground. A graveyard of victims, all killed by the same invisible enemy, all biting down at roughly the same height. There is even a strange synchronization to it. Many of the infected ants lock onto their leaves at around the same time of day, near noon, as if the fungus, across all those separate bodies, is following one hidden clock. Stand in one of those clearings, and you are looking at a slow-motion massacre, frozen in place on the undersides of the leaves. Now the ant is dead, locked to its leaf, and the fungus no longer needs it, except as food and a foothold. Over the next few days, it finishes consuming whatever is left inside the body. Then, it grows. A long, thin stalk pushes its way out of the back of the dead ant's head, reaching up into the air like a dark antenna sprouting from a corpse. At the tip, the fungus forms a capsule packed with spores, and when those spores are ripe, they fall. They rain down onto the forest floor below, scattering across the very trails where the dead ant's living colony mates are still walking, still working. Some of those spores will land on new ants, and the entire nightmare begins again, from the start. If this is the kind of story that fascinates and disturbs you in equal measure, the kind where nature turns out to be stranger and darker than any horror film, take a second to subscribe. Every week we go into worlds almost no one looks at twice. Because this quiet loop of infection has been turning in the world's forests for an astonishingly long time, the ants are not entirely helpless against it, though. Faced with a threat this deadly, carpenter ant colonies have evolved their own defenses. Healthy ants can sometimes sense when a nestmate has been infected, and when they do, they carry the sick ant far away from the colony and abandon it out there, cutting the fungus off before it can spread. Some colonies seem to avoid the patches thick with fungal corpses entirely, routing their trails around the danger zones. It is a slow, quiet war that has been running for ages. The fungus refines its takeover. The ants refine their defenses. Neither side ever fully wins. And that long stalemate is exactly why the fungus had to become so good at hiding inside a host that still looks and acts healthy. Tip its hand too soon, and the colony hauls its victim away before the job is done. And here is something that might make your skin crawl just a little more. This is not one fungus doing this to one kind of ant. It is a whole family of specialists. Cordyceps is not a single species, but a large group of closely related fungi, and many of them are tuned to one specific host. One fungus targets one kind of ant. Another targets a different insect entirely. Each one is a custom-built body snatcher, evolved for its chosen victim and no other. Scientists used to sum it up with a simple, chilling phrase: one ant, one fungus. There are hundreds of these fungi out there, and researchers keep discovering more. And it is ancient. Fossil leaves have been found, bearing the same telltale scars of the death grip, the marks left by insects that bit down and locked on tens of millions of years ago. This fungus was zombifying insects long before there were any humans around to be horrified by it. It is one of the oldest puppet shows on Earth, and scientists are not studying it just to be unsettled. Cordyceps is a master at controlling behavior using nothing but chemistry, and that fascinates researchers. The fungus floods its host with a mix of compounds to make specific muscles move on command. Working out exactly which chemical does what could teach us things about how muscles and nervous systems work in general, and a few of those fungal compounds are already being examined for medicine. An organism this good at hijacking biology has, in a sense, run millions of years of experiments that we are only now beginning to read. The horror and the science here are the same thing, just seen from two different sides. If all of this sounds strangely familiar, there is a reason. This exact fungus is the inspiration behind The Last of Us, the hit video game and television show where a mutated cordyceps turns people into zombies and collapses civilization. The creators got the idea from a nature documentary showing this real ant climbing, biting down, and sprouting its deadly stalk. The fiction simply took one more step and imagined the fungus jumping to humans. Which raises the question you are probably already asking. Could it actually happen to us? Here is the honest answer, and it is good news. No, Cordyceps cannot turn you into a zombie. It cannot even infect you. There are two solid reasons, and they are worth understanding. The first is heat. These fungi are built to live at the cool temperatures of an insect's body in a shaded forest. Your body runs much warmer, around 37 degrees Celsius, and that warmth alone is enough to stop the fungus from ever taking hold. Your own body heat is a wall it simply cannot climb. The second reason is specialization. Each of these fungi spent millions of years evolving to manipulate one specific insect with one specific kind of body. A human being is a wildly different and far more complex animal, defended by a powerful immune system that an ant does not have. The leap from an ant to a person is not a small step. It is a vast gap that this fungus has no key to cross. So the zombie apocalypse in the show is fiction, and it will stay fiction. The real Cordyceps is terrifying precisely because it is so perfectly, narrowly built for the insect world, and not for ours. One last thing, because you may have seen the word Cordyceps somewhere unexpected, on a bottle of supplements at a health store. That is real, and it is a completely different fungus. The Cordyceps sold for energy and wellness is a separate species, a caterpillar fungus from the high Tibetan plateau. Same broad family, entirely different organism, and it does not zombify anything at all. So if you take it, rest easy. You are not hosting a body snatcher. You are just drinking a very expensive mushroom. So let us go back to that ant, walking along a branch in the rainforest, carrying food home, with no idea what is already growing inside it. You know now what is coming for it. Not a quick death, but a slow, patient takeover. A fungus that keeps it alive while it eats it. That never touches its mind, but seizes its muscles and marches it to a chosen spot that locks its jaws forever, kills it in the open air, and grows a stalk from its skull to rain spores down onto its own family below. That is what Cordyceps really is. Not a movie monster. Something quieter, older, and in its own way far more unsettling. A fungus that learned to drive a living body without ever needing the brain inside it. It does not hate the ant. It does not even know the ant is there. It simply found a way to turn another creature into a tool, and it has been doing it flawlessly since long before we existed. So here is my question for you, and I keep coming back to it. If a simple fungus, with no brain of its own, can take over the body of another animal this completely, how thin is the line really between being in control of yourself and being driven by something else? If this changed the way you see the forest floor, subscribe. Every week, we go into worlds almost no one looks at twice. And the next time you walk through a damp, green forest, do something for me. Look up at the undersides of the leaves. Some of them may be holding a very small, very still passenger, frozen mid-bite, with a dark stalk growing quietly toward the light.